Hi, I'm SeaJay, and I'm the diver in this video. I'm wearing a camera on top of my mask, so you can see exactly what's going on, and I'm going to tell you about the dive and exactly what we were doing. These gentlemen here, they're helping me out, and actually I'm helping them out. We're installing a boat lift together, and that gray tube that you see that's in the water, they just dropped in the water. That's actually a conduit. It's going to hold a wire and connect the left side and the right side of a boat lift so that electricity can be brought to both sides and power both motors on either side of the boat lift so they can lift a boat up. You guys are handing me some brackets so that I can go down and connect this to the piling and make sure that everything gets installed properly. The current going through here rocks and rolls pretty good on a regular basis, and so we need to make sure that it stays even below the water line. Historically, they'll break off after a long period of time, and so they hire me to go down and connect this conduit to the piling. Current was running pretty good that day. Not too bad, but I've seen worse. But it's probably 2 or 3 miles an hour, which underwater feels about like maybe a 40 or 50 mile an hour wind. It'll blow things around and rip that conduit off. Now, what you're looking at here is probably the most difficult part of the job, and that's the initial set. You see the conduit's got a permanent bend, a 90-degree angle in it that they put in there. They knew exactly how far apart the two pilings were, and they put a 90-degree bend at either side, so the conduit will go down one piling and cross the bottom and come up the other side. So this is the most taxing and the most difficult part of the job, really, is connecting the very first bracket, which I've kept in my sleeve right there. And I got to make sure that it's right the first time, so that because all of the other brackets are going to be mounted in accordance with that 90-degree bend, and making sure that 90-degree bend is right there at the bottom of that piling, and goes straight over to the other side. About 20 feet of water, salt water. It's pretty heavily tidal. That first nail started. I've got the advantage here on this very first bracket of being against the bottom, so I'm kind of laying on the bottom, sort of kneeling on the you see the water rushing by. I'm kind of on the leeward side of that piling, so it sort of blocks the current a little bit. Like I said, that's probably the hardest one. Got to make sure it's straight, it's in the right position. I didn't really like the way that that second nail went in, so I'm going to tear that out and redo it. Once that first bracket is set, then everything else gets built up around it. It looks like I finally got it right. Stainless nails. No, we say stainless. The stainless steel nails and stainless steel brackets holding PVC, gray PVC. It's electrical conduit. You see that piling is nice and clean. They just put that in, so there's no barnacles or oysters on that piling, which is a luxury that I don't normally have. Usually I'm dealing with old pilings that are covered in crust.
No, I went down there with gloves on, and then when I came up, I did one so I could manipulate the nail.
And you see there, when I jumped in the water, I had a pair of gloves on. I had a pair of gloves on, and since I had to manipulate nails and stuff, I figured I'd take one off, and you know, had problems with the one underwater. So this time I'm going down with no gloves, which is pretty rare. It's like I said, it's a rare luxury to be able to do that. You can see the current has kind of bowed the conduit out away from the piling. So that's really the hard part at this point, is getting that conduit to sort of sit up against the piling in an approximate location so that I can fasten those brackets in properly. Renwick, the guy who runs the push boat and all that stuff, he was the one who suggested, you know, just tie it in place first and then kind of make all your adjustments, and I really kind of like that idea. You can see here I'm making sure that it goes straight across from one piling to the other. Those white bags there, they're full of sand bags. I got 4 50-pounders that I sort of made and threw in the water before I went to do the dive. I'm going to use those to weigh the center part of that conduit down. Right now they're in the way though, so sort of move them out of the way and then tie this conduit up in place. Renwick had made the suggestion. At first I said no, I'm just going to go ahead and fasten it, but with the current going and everything else, I decided, you know, it's probably a really good idea. Let me try it out. And I liked it so much, I said, you know, give me a second one. You'll see me go up for a second one here in a second. Because that current's really pushing on that conduit, sort of pushing it out of the way. And these bricks that are duct taped to the conduit, they're just there to sink the conduit. Inside of the conduit is completely dry, so the whole thing kind of floats. And they have to put those bricks on there to get it to go down at all. So I'm going to kind of move it around, make sure that it's straight. And you see that purple stuff there, that is a type of coral that grows locally in the low country. This is right at Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. That coral is called Gorgonia, and there's some that's bright purple, some that's bright yellow, some that is bright orange, and some of it that is bright white. I think the bright purple is the most common. Very interesting organism. Alright, so now I'll take a second rope down and tie up the conduit, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 feet above the first one, so that I've got some conduit that is, you know, laying against the piling correctly, and I've got a place to be able to install a bracket. Now, when you get up above the ground like this, and you know, like I said, I'm probably 5 feet above the ground. Nothing's touching, right? So you have this, you know, complicated job to do, in that you got to remain neutrally buoyant. In other words, you don't want to be floating, or and you don't want to be sinking. You got to be in the middle somewhere. And you do that with a combination of things that you learn in diving. One of them is to use your lungs, fill them full if you want to go up, and breathe out if you want to go down. So during all of that, there's quite a bit of distraction in that you're trying to maintain neutral buoyancy. It gets difficult to, you know, tie knots and stuff. See there in the middle is where I'm going to put a bracket. constant up and down like that isn't too good for a diver. So I just got to take it easy, take it slow up and down all day.
Yeah, thanks.
And now one of the things that I did when I edited this video is I cut out the, when I nailed down.
Looks good. Looks real good.
I cut out the time.
What do you say? Did he?
What I'm doing is I'm taking instruction on how far apart to put the brackets.
It's easy to do. I'm gonna get a bag of these things and I'm just gonna nail the shit out of all of them. It's easy to hammer. It's a lot easier to hammer than it is.
You can hear me better than you can hear Renwick. But anyway, I cut out the video where I'd put in that second bracket, and so you don't get to see it until later. But the thing about the brackets is that if I put them too close together, then I'm using a lot of hardware that's not really necessary. And stainless nails and stainless brackets aren't cheap. They're probably $10 or $15 a piece for everything. Anyway, if they're too far apart, then the system won't work. So it was kind of a heavy deal on exactly how far we wanted to put them apart. I probably put 30 in that day. And you can see here that I'm moving these sandbags, these 4 50-pound sandbags that I had made and then dropped in the water on the site. And that's to put over the conduit in the middle. And what will happen is sand will build up around them, and it will help hold that down so that all these rushing currents back and forth don't ever threaten the integrity of that conduit. I'm pretty careful about where I put these sandbags. Need to make sure they're evenly spaced.
Hey, up there in my tool basket.
Now I can take those gloves back off again.
A little black bag with a hook on it. It says Bear, B-A-R-E.
And you can hear me talking about that black bag. That's a mesh bag for me to be able to put a whole bunch of brackets and nails and stuff in. That sound that you hear is actually a ratcheting power driver that they're using to screw in some brackets above the water line, in the dry. So there's my bag, and I've got nails and brackets. I've got that whole system clipped off to me, and a hammer. Let's put some brackets on. You notice here at the corner, the very bottommost bracket, I kind of double the brackets up. I've only put them maybe 3 or 4 inches apart because that's going to be the highest stress point really. So I put 2 of them right next to each other. It's a little awkward to work with the bag and mid-column and with the current and stuff, and you can see here that hey, all of a sudden I'm in the middle of the water and I've lost my piling. I got blown off the piling. So I go and start looking around for other pilings, and I find one old piling there that's not the same as the one that I was on. And now I'm cruising along the bottom. I'm trying to get back to where I was. The current took me off. There's some purple gorgonia. I'm looking around for the piling that I was just working on. I suddenly got lost, right? Oh, there's another piling, and that one's old also. That's an old piling. That's not the right piling. Let's keep looking. And there's the right piling. That's what a new piling looks like before stuff grows on it. I cruise around, look around, and oh, there's my bracket. Okay, that's where I was. Very easy to get blown off the dive site, and you can spend all day looking for where you're supposed to be. things that can be so simple topside and so easy to do on a daily basis, like, hey, you know, nail some nails, it can get really difficult and complicated underwater. You know, I've got two hands. I can't put a nail, you know, in my mouth. Hey, one thing I wanted to tell you about too is that ring. You see that ring on my wedding finger? It's my wedding band. I actually bought that ring knowing that I would be diving with it. And it's a rare alloy made by a jeweler in Salt Lake City. It's called Vitalium. It's a type of cobalt chromium. It's a very unique metal. If something were to come along and try to crush that while I was working, it would actually break the ring. It would snap the ring rather than crush my finger. And yet it will never corrode. It always remains that color, and it won't shatter if I hit it against something. So it's a pretty unique material. It's neither cobalt chromium nor is it titanium or stainless steel. It's a very safe metal to use. And I mean, that just goes to show you what it's like to be a commercial diver. I mean, everything you do in your life is sort of related to being a commercial diver. Even the wedding band that you pick. It's a big deal to do what I get to do for a living. You know, there's nothing else that I'd rather do in the world, really. Every day's a challenge, and you know, I'm constantly troubleshooting. You know, there's a lot of physical activity, a lot of physical difficulty, and at the same time, you've got to remain focused enough to be able to do your job and do it safely, and you know, not lose any fingers, so to speak. And at the same time, successfully, you know, do a job.
Well, I would, but I'd have to fold it in half. If I fold it in half, I got 1 inch. That's right. All right.
So what I've done there.
I'm gonna put these about that far apart. Fair enough. That's like 15, 18 inches. All right. I'm gonna put a lot of these bastards on there. Oh, okay.
So what I've just done there is I've just established this is how I'm going to figure out how far apart these things are. Part of the reason is because when you're underwater, there's a natural magnification that happens when light goes through the lenses of your mask. And so everything is like 25% closer than it looks, and or rather it looks 25% closer than it really is, and it's magnified as well. It looks 25% bigger. So doing an eye measurement and saying, okay, that's about 1.5 feet or so. You see I've got those two brackets right next to each other. That's at the very bottom of one of those pilings. Anyway, doing an eye measurement is very difficult to do, and so and untrustworthy. And so what I said was, hey, you know, let's use the hammer as a measuring tool, and there it is. You can see that's about 18 inches, 15 to 18 inches or so, which is where we wanted to. That's the spacing that we wanted to give to the brackets. There, do it again. Right about there. You can even hear hammers, people hammering topside. See my hammer, I'm hammering. But you hear another hammer in the background, and that's somebody doing the same thing above the water line while I'm hammering on my, underwater. And you see that I've developed a couple of little techniques that make my job a little easier. One of them is to stuff a bunch of nails into my sleeve so they're easy and quick to grab. Swinging a hammer underwater is pretty unique too. You wouldn't think so, but water is so much thicker than air that it takes a lot more force to get a hammer moving underwater. It's an interesting feeling, an interesting sensation. It takes a lot of strength to do it for a period of time. And here I'm measuring the difference between the last bracket that I'm about to put in and where they put a bracket, and it's about the same. So now I know that when the tide goes out and the water level goes down, it's going to look consistent, which this part is pretty important. I mean, the client who owns the dock he's paid a lot of money for his boat, he's paid a lot of money for his dock, and he's paid a lot of money for this boat lift to be installed. It should look right. And here I'm checking the straightness, measuring out, making sure that conduit is straight, pleasing to the eye, consistent. And like I said before, I'm mid-column here. It makes hammering and the buoyancy and all that kind of stuff makes it very difficult. You're doing all of it at the same time. Your brain is very busy solving problems and trying not to smash your fingers. I may even have my legs wrapped around the piling at this point, because if you've noticed the current has slowed down. We're about to go through a tidal change, and so the current's slowed down, and I have the opportunity to be able to get vertical and wrap my legs around that piling. There's another measurement. And that Vitalium ring that I was telling you about again. Wearing a wedding band while you're working, that's a unique thing. And I thank the guys that made that alloy that makes it safe for me to be able to wear a ring underwater. A lot of guys don't, and that's not how I feel about it. I feel like I'm always married, and I always want that ring. And being able to keep my fingers safe while doing that, that's a great thing. So I appreciate it, you guys, for making an alloy that's safe and corrosion free and stays shiny and pretty even in this environment. This is all saltwater, seawater, highly corrosive. Alright, so now I'm going to show you the job as it's done. See, these brackets are nice and consistent. Consistently spaced, very pretty, everything's straight. And you can see the watercolor change as you go deep. And then there's that 90-degree bend. Sandbag, sandbag. Sandbag. And you can see sand already starting to cover that sandbag. And the fourth sandbag. So 200 pounds holding it down in the center. I'm going to come up here on the 90, it's the left side, and I get startled by these fish. Look at the fish over there. a little school of juvenile Atlantic spades. They're just babies. Nice and consistent, 15 to 18 inches apart. That nail that you saw in the side of the piling was that was a marker for me. That was the low water mark. Saw this guy while I was down there too, next to some of that purple gorgonia. Pretty sure that's a juvenile black sea bass. He's shy, he didn't want to talk. There's some yellow gorgonia. Cool stuff at this dive site, that's for sure. And Renwick had offered to give me a hand getting out, but I said, nah, I got it. Renwick is a second cousin, by the way. Big family, small town, at least it used to be. And that's it. Great job. Love working for STEADFAST. Guys, thank you very much for the business. Call me again. Please like and subscribe. Share the video. Thank you.